I took the dogs out in the middle of the night once again, and this is probably a year and a half after I had my initial howl experience, where I heard a mimicking whistle, which is the whistle that I use for my dogs. And I was like, I know nobody lives here. My name is Dustin Varga, and we're in northwest Wyoming right now. Basically, where we're standing and sitting right now is the epicenter of all of the activity that I've experienced extra-dimensionally and in this dimension as well here in northwest Wyoming. For me, growing up as a kid in rural Indiana, the paranormal was actually always on my mind, and the way that the paranormal and ETs, anything that was extra-dimensional, excluding Bigfoot outside of what we would watch with Leonard Nimoy or even the $6 Million Man. I remember watching that when I was a little kid and being like, oh, Bigfoot, that seems quasi-relevant, you know what I mean, for a person that was born in 1970. That being said, it's always been on my mind. And I think even my family, my mom and dad, my brothers and sisters knew that there was something out there that was different. I just was able to adhere myself to that a lot easier. I can actually remember my first out-of-body experience and or my first lucid dream. And the way that I put that into context is the first time that I flew in my dreams. And I've actually written music about it because it was such a relevant part of my childhood that I knew I always wanted to go back and explore what I know now is consciousness in my dreams. So yeah, it was a really huge part of it. And of course we would like try and go ghost hunting long before there were any ghost programs in the late 70s and in the early 80s. We would do that because it was fun and it was exciting. You know what I mean? It was just always kind of one of those things in the back of our minds where we're like, this is exciting. In rural Indiana, of course, that makes sense. My first experience with Bigfoot happened about 3 years ago, and it was just right down at our house where we live. And I had taken the dog outside in the middle of the night to go use the bathroom. He was just a puppy. And, you know, I always scan the skies. I was already part of a consciousness that was exploring our sky family, but I had no real bearing on our forest family because it just hadn't entered my mind yet. And I was outside with the dog, and at about, it was probably about 2:15 in the morning, I heard what I thought was the volunteer fire department siren for a fire. And I was like, this is really odd, and I can't believe it's at 2 o'clock in the morning. But then I noticed that it was organic. And immediately I was struck by how long it had lasted, probably 10 or 11 seconds, and actually how the dog had reacted to it. And he was just a puppy. He was like maybe 12 weeks old, and he fully froze. And I was like, I'm not sure what this is. So I scooped up the dog and I went inside, and immediately later that morning, I went and researched what sounds like an air raid siren that would be an animal, and the Ohio call came up. And that really changed everything for me and perspectivized where I was heading with it in this realm and in my consciousness. For me, after that initial introduction to what that even had any bearing on where I was at, I was heavily into astral projection and lucid dreaming. So what I did outside of research in this dimension was research extra-dimensionally. So what I do for myself personally is I've taught myself techniques on how to access that information. So outside of the internet and what I could find about the Ohio call, I knew immediately what was going on. But I had no context in this area. I had never heard anything, I've never seen anything, I never felt anything until I went back and was like, actually I might have. So with being in contact with my consciousness and accessing things outside of this dimension, I was able to make contact, in quotations, extra dimensionally through astral projection, our sky family, basically. And the way that I would do that is throughout the day, I would get up and immediately start my meditation on what I needed to do when the real work happens, which is at night, and when I close my eyes. And that happens for all of us. We all have that innate capability to not only contact your sky family and your force family, but any dimension and anything that has ever happened, via the Akashic records, etc. That stuff all has prevalence, and it's compressed where we're at in this third dimension, which is really intriguing. You know what I mean? So if you can like quasi think outside of the box, and you can, however you want to put that into context, I figure the box would be third dimensionality, right? And as we know, the Schumann resonance and how the vibration of Earth is changing exponentially through a hive mind and through consciousness, everybody is experiencing that, especially people that are willing to take that step forward, because it's so hard to not for a lot of people, simply because it just doesn't really quite fit into this rhetoric, you know what I mean? So for me, being able to access what Sasquatch and or our force family, I went directly to my spirit guides, and I went through the sky family process, which basically means meditation, creating intent, and then following through with that when you're out of body at night. And that's it sounds relatively simple, and it is, because we all do it all the time. It's just a matter of like unlocking that code. So you can say to yourself, today I'm going to talk to my spirit guide, I'm going to talk to my sky family, and I'm going to learn how to heal. Because that's ultimately all I ever want, is to heal my family, my pets, my friends, because it's the only thing that really counts. You know what I mean? Longevity is one thing. Understanding what happens posthumously is another, which we all know, traveling extra-dimensionally and visiting with Sasquatch or your ET family changes all of that and literally puts that playbook in your hands. So in retrospect, once I was able to hear that howl, I knew that I had to get more in touch with the forest family, because it's a much more tangible aspect of dimensionality than, say, ETs or the paranormal, because you can see, you can be a part of that vibration literally by just going into the woods. Ever since the howl, my eyes are wide open, and that includes all three of them. You know what I mean? Like when I close my eyes at night, like the things that I'm searching for, especially when I'm creating intent to come to where I have a gifting spot and a place of meditation that I visit regularly, that I've worn through with my bare feet, because I feel like when you can wiggle your toes in the earth, automatically I try and send up a beacon. And I think that's what all of us do. Like regardless of what the level of intent or your energy level, once that vibration is locked in with on a cellular basis, you're in. All you have to do is just literally, I feel like, is create the intent. And the way we create the intent is like going snowboarding, go climb a mountain, go surfing, like spend time in nature, where if you can, isolate yourself, which I personally do more than, my wife and family want me to do, because, it's dangerous. But I feel like that I'm at my best when I'm by myself in nature. And at those moments is when I feel vibration. And for me, vibration, literally, I can tell where I'm at personally, vibrationally, on the bridge of my nose. It has nothing to do with a third eye. It has nothing to do with that for me. but all I have to do is close my eyes and I can feel how fast it vibrates. So for instance, tonight is the full moon. All I have to do is close my eyes and it's really going fast. So automatically I know that if I create the proper intent and have a better reaction and or interaction throughout the day with nature and or people, I'm gonna have a better experience when I exit my body, which means lucidity. And if I'm lucid, I can go to an astral projection and therefore I can call my forest family together. So at my spot right over here, what I literally do is create the intent to not only meet with my sky family, but with my forest family. And then I try and envision what that might look like out of body. So colors and contrast and skies are different, but it's so much at home. And traveling out of body is beyond it's, you know, we might call ourselves experiencers, but in actuality, we are the experience. So when we have these discussions with our friends and family about meeting your sky family or meeting, you know, a Sasquatch family, etc., it all boils down to perspective and where your vibration is at for everybody. So if, you know, if everybody's vibration is not the same, then it doesn't really work. But once you're able to like feel that and hone in on it, everything changes. And it changes for the better because we get the information that we're looking for. And if perhaps we're learning how to heal, I just want to be able to heal, you know, that's it. Whether it's myself, which we have to do, you know, you get on the airplane and the oxygen drops, you go you first, because then you got to be able to pass that on. Because if you're not functioning at that level, this is a responsibility of awareness, basically. We have a responsibility as conscious individuals to level the field so that everybody can move up and make sure that this planet and everything that's universal works continuously. Information that I've personally received from the forest family is different because I'm not quite sure if I'm on the level that I need to be to actually interact. You know, I've had the interactions where, once again, it always revolves around the dogs. Where, for instance, I took the dogs out in the middle of the night once again, and this is probably a year and a half after I had my initial howl experience, where I heard a mimicking whistle, which is the whistle that I use for my dogs. And I was like, I know nobody lives here. Where's this whistle coming from? And my dogs were paying attention to that and they would respond. And I'm like, no, you don't. No. We're not going over there. And trust me when I say this, like Sasquatch was not on my mind when I heard that. I just thought it was a random person that was whistling like, and then the whistle moved and it was again, and then it moved and it was again. Then I heard the owls and I was like, okay. And I actually have a recording this and I would love to share that with you. I need to do work sonically, but I heard the owls and I was like, I know exactly what this is. So eventually I was like, I got my dogs together, and after I did respond with whistles of my own and got a response. And after the whistles were in front of me, finally I heard a whistle behind me and I said, we're going in the house because things are about to change. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure the pets were safe and myself as well because it was new territory. My family hasn't really said anything about it, although my son has had experiences, not so much the forest family or Sasquatch, but other extraterrestrial things that have appeared. And a lot of it does appear out of body or in his dream state. So one evening, Finn and I which is my son, we were up on the mountain that's behind us here, and it was 10:30 at night. And we glanced across the valley over here and we saw a series of lights that were doing like a dancing formation. And at first we weren't sure what it was, if it was people with headlamps on, but it's a highly irregular place to have that. And then it finally came to my mind that, yeah, these are orbs. And the information that I've got from the orbs is not much. But the information that I've got when I've seen orbs and then gone and done astral projection work is immense. One night I filmed an orb during a full moon in this exact place and even said hello when I did the recording, and I'll share this with you guys. And I knew exactly the work that I needed to do was when I went back down to my house and laid my head down, I knew exactly the work to do. I created the intent to meet with my sky family, and I did. And it was an experience where I was thrust through the roof of my house and through what felt like dimensions, but I can't really tell. A lot of times I know sort of what dimension I would be in outside of the fourth simply by the vibrational level and the appearance of what I'm seeing. Like fourth dimension, you're hearing some somewhat darker things. The howl of 1,000 wolves or the screams of 1,000 people that aren't really normal. But if you can bypass that and understand that none of that has any bearing, then you move forward in fifth, sixth, however many dimensions. But that night I created the intent to meet with my sky family, and I did. And all of a sudden in front of me would what normally would be called, in quotations, an Eben or a gray. What I noticed about this individual is that I could see inside of its mouth, but I could also see a glistening on the eyes. And I was dumbfounded, of course, and I was for a lack of words, had nothing other to say than I love you. And he looked at me and he said, "We live you too." And I was like, I'm good. And then I was back in my body. And I learned so much from that experience. So that like I automatically knew that perception is nothing, but dimensionality is everything. And as long as you can if you can open your heart, then by all means, the universe is yours. Once you figure out or in quotations kind of unlock that door, no, Sasquatch is, no, it's just one part of the big puzzle. It's an enigma, but ultimately they're all fit together. So in one of my most pertinent out-of-body experiences, which once again happened right here, as I was traveling up this in a flight formation, which now I'm past that. I don't even use the wings anymore because you just go. I heard the exact same howl out of body. And that's when I knew that it was real. And you can do with whatever you want with that information, but automatically I know that Sasquatch, the sky family, subterraneans, it doesn't matter, universally, all of this is just put together in a symbiotic relationship via vibration. That's it. So, whether you raise your voice at somebody during the day or keep it quiet has relevance. You know what I mean? The vocal cords are a vibratory, that's it. That's the only way that we communicate in this dimension and as humans. So if you can figure out how to tone that down and tone this down, then by all means, then you get the key to the door.